All right, we're gonna start up. Before I go over what's on the screen right here, you all have a handout, okay? And the handout is on NS user defaults. In a nutshell, real simply, without having you have to go and read from the Apple documentation or whatever, NS user defaults is a way to provide permanent data storage that's not a database. All right? What it actually is it's what's known as a plist or a property list. All right? It allows you to store data between application launches. You're going to see that in just a couple minutes. All right? There's no limits to its size. However, there's only certain types of data that can be stored there. You can see it down towards the bottom middle of page 1. You can store array data, dictionary, number, and string. There's a real big one there that's missing that you may or may not have thought of, and that is it literally can't store NS object data. Remember, object is the thing where it's not any special type. It can hold basically anything. All right? And then if you turn it to the back, and I'm not going to go over any of this, but just so you see that, they show you how you can both save to NS user defaults and read from NS user defaults. All right, so with that said, that was just meant to be a very, very fast introduction. All right, this particular example, this is actually, I did this last week, and I put it in that folder that you copied last week, that 225 folder, plus I put it in the one today. And I just want to literally spend no more than 5 minutes going over some of the stuff that's in here, just so you see it. All right? Kind of an interesting app for one reason, and that is there's no GUI. There's no GUI at all in this app. All right? But what we're doing here is we're saying basically we want to set up something in NS user defaults. We're setting an object. It's going to be a string. Its value is Jeff, and it'll be referred to as first name. This is all done with key value pairs. You've seen this before in other things that we've worked with. All right? Then if we print this, and if we print it just like this, what will happen is it'll say optional Jeff. Why is it going to say optional? Remember that question mark colon stuff? All right, it's possible that there was nothing set for it. So to save you, it ends up printing in right here. This, literally, this would print out. All right, print that out. But if we do want to be able to have it just say Jeff without the optional, then we assign it to a data type or to a variable like this. So notice, NS user default dot standard default, same thing. Dot object for key, same thing. All right, first name, but that has an exclamation point after it. So that one, literally, what this will print if we run this is this will say optional Jeff for this one. This one will just say Jeff. Does that make sense? All right. And then as I move this down a little bit here, oops. Then we created an array that's called numbers. All right? And we set it up, basically we set it up to be safe. Okay? And it's going to be numbers. All right? But it'll be referred to, the 4 key is kind of the name of the variable for lack of better words. So it's going to be called array. All right? And when we do this, you'll notice that you got to do some weird kind of stuff in here. Because when you are working with NS user defaults, and you create a variable like this, and you have to say as, all right? So I have to say as NS array. Notice there's an exclamation point there, and one there. That's the syntax of the language, all right? I can't give you the great reason as to why it's done that way, but it's done as a safety or a precautionary type of measure. Yes?
So when you store an array, it's almost like storing an array inside of almost an array.
Well, more than anything else, what this is, in some kind of ways, is this is like, look at it as being maybe the world's worst database. That's kind of what you're doing. Okay. All right? And then when you print it out, we can print it out like this. But the key thing in here is exclamation point there, exclamation point there. And when you work with NS user defaults and you have to say as something, almost always after the as, you will be required to put an exclamation point in there. If you don't put it in, you're going to get an error message. All right? And usually, because it gives you the help, it'll say, hey, you're missing that, you want to put it in. All right? So I want to show you this, and again, it doesn't look like much. So if I run this, you know, it's no big thing. I don't have to show you the simulator because we don't have any GUI on here. All right? In fact, I want to move the simulator over so you can see right in here where I'm going nuts with a mouse so you can see what the output is. Then I'm going to change something and run it again. And hopefully when we do that, then you'll understand the importance of using this. All right? Because right now, it's like, okay, that's all fine and dandy. You've given me absolutely no reason, Jeff, why I'd ever want to use this. All right? Now, again, unfortunately, that mine takes a little while to come up. But what should print out here is optional Jeff, Jeff, and then those numbers. Okay, you should see that in just a minute. But then what I'm going to do, after it hopefully comes up there in just a minute, is I'm going to go and comment out the lines that set that set line and the other set line and run it again. And you'll notice the values of both those will be saved. So the output will be exactly the same as it was previously. That's the key thing when you're working with this. So when we create this to-do list, which is what we're going to start doing hopefully in 5 minutes or so, all right, we're using NS user defaults to store the data. The recommendation is that works fine, but you don't want to sit there and say, well, I don't need a database now. I've got NS user defaults. All right? But if it's for smaller types of things like that, it works just fine. All right? And like I said, as always, mine is taking 1.5 years to start running, which is weird because I ran it right before we started class. But and it should be on this side. That's where it's always printed. That's where all the output goes. There's nothing over there. That's the filtering. So sometimes if I stop the simulator and run it again, it goes a little faster the second time. I don't know why. So you have a copy of this, and you have a copy of the to-do list, which we are about to make. All right? Well, this isn't showing you much because for whatever reason, it's taking too long to run. I don't want to waste my time. What I'd suggest is later you bring the program up, run the program, and then come back, and the 2 lines where you set it, where you've got the set user defaults, after you've run it once, comment those lines out, stop the simulator, comment those lines out, run it again. You should get the same output. Well, maybe I'll get something. Come on. I mean, it should take no time. There's no interface. Now that's taking a while, so I don't know what's going on with this machine. Again, I've said this before. If one machine here is going to be hosed, I'd rather have it be mine. Right? There it is. So there's the array. So let me move this up a little bit so that you see it. See how it says optional Jeff and then Jeff right here? The first one is the first print statement. The second one, since we unwrapped it, has got just Jeff. All right. And this is the array, and that's the array basically printed right here. But then after we set it up and we went through the for loop, we printed it out because that's typically the way you'd want it shown, not within brackets like that. But the point is, now I'm going to come back, and the 2 lines that I used, all right, this line, the set object right here, I'm going to comment that one out. And the one that we did down here, let's see, that's Jeff, that's for key. And this one, I'm going to comment that one out. All right. I'm going to stop the simulator, which I should have done first anyway. All right. Now I have to either keep this one in, because this is where I print out the username, but the other one that's down here for the array, that one I can now comment out. All right, so I've commented both those lines out that say set object. Both of them are now commented out. I will do a file, save. You notice the simulator is not running, but I'll build it again. Hopefully it won't take as long this time, and you'll see the same output that you saw before. All right, that's the key thing to realize. Because what we're going to do is we're going to build this to-do list, all right, and what's going to happen is, since we're going to use NS user defaults, when we first do it, we won't add the code for the NS user defaults. So you can go and add things merrily along your way into the to-do list. But then when you stop the run and start it up again, guess what? The to-do list is empty. Even if you've got stuff in it, it's been removed. So then we'll put the code in so that we do have the stuff in there, all right? So if you notice now, we get the same output that we had before. See that? Even though those have been commented out. That's what I wanted to show you. All right, so again, if we run into problems on this, see, the biggest problem that we seem to have with a lot of this stuff is that one or more of you, and sometimes it's me, you fall a little bit behind or something seems to go wrong. If it does, we don't have a lot of time because I like to get through as much of this today as we can. So the good news is everyone here now has a completed copy of this. So if you do run into any problems, you should be able to fix them. All right? What I'd like to do, and I haven't done this yet, so I've got to do it between now and Thursday, but what I'd like to do on Thursday is to come back and rebuild this thing, ideally, and I got to figure out how to do it because I'm still working on it, twice. All right, we're going to rebuild this to-do list twice. One time, what happens is, and this is really good because both Android and iPhone ship with an RDBMS, a relational database management system called SQLite. So I'd like to bring that in and redo it using SQLite. Then I'd also like to go back and redo it using Core Data. All right? And you may or may not have noticed when we start to create a project, you always have those boxes down at the bottom, and one of them says use Core Data. We'll finally check that one. All right? And I hope to get through that all that stuff before we break. Okay? All right, let me stop. I think the simulator's still running here. That's why I'm seeing this. Quit that. All right, and I think I've got the project. I think I've stopped it, at least. So if you would, please, let's go in and start a new project. But as soon as you go in and get in, when it comes up and it asks you, don't choose single view. We're not going to do that. So when you get to that point, please stop. So in other words, come in here into Xcode, create a new project. When you get to right here, stop. All right? In the past, for every project basically we've created, here we've chosen single view app. You can see if you look on the screen that the one I chose was tabbed application. That is the same one that I want you to choose right now, please. So choose tabbed application, click next. Now I've got a to-do list because I did it last night. I redid it today to make sure there'd be no problems. So I've got a to-do list 1. So I'm going to call mine JPS to-do list. You can just call yours to-do list if you want, or whatever you'd like to call it. But I'm going to use my initials here because I know I don't have anything called JPS to-do list. Bless you. And I hope everybody knows this by now. You can put blank spaces in here. Again, what's in that thing under product name, for right now, what is yours? Bread what?
Breadmate.
Breadmate? All right. So for the currency app that Luke has been doing for Android, he called it Breadmate. So he could call his Breadmate up here, And that thing where it says product name, if you ever submit it to the App Store and it's accepted, that's the name it's going to have. All right? So you can put blank spaces in there, and I already have. You can keep it at Swift. You can keep it at iPhone. It's all fine and dandy the way it is. Just click Next. Save it where you normally save things. For me, it's on the desktop. For you, it may be someplace else if you've created a folder under your desktop or something. And I know this is way, way early for saying this because, but we've got 2.5 more months left, okay? But one thing to think about is when we get to mid-May or so, if you want to keep any of this stuff, you are going to you're going to have to bring in your own flash drive and copy it to a flash drive or something else. All right, because what John will be doing this summer is cleaning all of these machines. So removing everything that's on them. So if you forget and it's August and you call and say, hey, John, there's a very good chance he'll have cleaned it up already and there'll be nothing on it. All right. What you may or may not notice if you look on the screen, and your screen should look at least similar to mine, we now have first view controller.swift and second view controller.swift. In fact, what I'd like you to do is bring up the storyboard. And if we bring up the main storyboard here, I'm going to bring it up and I'm going to close my navigator. I'm going to close my object library. I'm going to close my view controller scenes, and now I've got this. It's hard to see, but if you notice in here, I've got this tab bar controller, and I also have in here a first view controller and a second view controller. So there's a lot of stuff in there now. To make it a little bit easier for me to see, and you've seen me do this before, I'm going to go and click on this first one, all right, right here that says tab bar controller. I'm going to click on that, and I'm going to go over to here. After I clicked on here, I'm going to go over and bring up my object library and change the size on this one just to a 3.5 inch. I'm going to make it nice and small. So that cut that one down. Then I'm going to do the same thing for the other ones. Again, all you do is you highlight it, you click on the view controller, the little yellow thing. In here, under your attributes inspector, you go under size and you choose whatever size you want. So that's going to cut that down, and it's going to cut the other one down. In fact, I think when I changed the first one, they may have all changed. But the point is, what I'm trying to get across to you is I'm trying to make it a lot smaller so it's easier for me to see what's going on. All right? So that's the first thing. Second thing, just so you know this right here is literally called a controller. You don't see that on the screen. What's going to happen is the functionality from this has been implemented into here and into here. So I'm not going to run this yet, but if I ran this program, what would come up would be this thing that says first view controller. That would automatically come up. If I click the button that says second, it would switch to this one. If I go back to here and I click the first, it would switch back to this one. That's the tabbed view nature. Does that make sense? All right. So we can build this any way we want, but I'm just going to, I'm going to build the first one first and then the second one. And what I mean is I'm going to start creating or painting or whatever you want to call it in here. So the first thing is where it says first view loaded by first view controller. I don't need those things. I'm going to get rid of those two labels. So I'm going to highlight the label here. I'm going to hit delete, and it's gone. I'm going to highlight it here, hit delete, and it's gone. Okay? All right. What we want in this first view controller is we're going to put a nav bar on the top. We're not going to use it, except that we're going to put a title on it. And then we're going to put a table view underneath that. So I'm going to come down over here, and in my object library, I'm going to type in navigation bar. And there it is. So I'm going to drag one of those right up, and I'm going to just do it right flush up to the top. That's fine. All right. So there's my title. I'm going to double click on it, and I'm going to call this to-do list app. All right. So I've done that so far. Next, I want to, in the rest of the area that you see me moving the mouse around in here, I want to put a table view in there. So I'm going to come back to my object library. I'm going to type table view right here. Once it finds it, I'm going to grab that table view and drag it up here. I'll just put it right there so that it's flush against that, and then I'm going to drag it down. Did I do anything too fast that people didn't understand? Because again, we can't keep slowing down all the time for this. So we have two things on here. Right at the top, we put in our to-do list app, right there. And then right underneath it, and I had it go the whole way down, I put in a table view. Well, if we went and ran this now, it's going to look like dog dirt because there are no layout constraints that are connected to this. We are going to set up layout constraints right now. All right? And if we do, and if you get something that's orange, remember that when you see these constraints, blue means good, red means bad, orange means ugh. Okay? So I'm going to set this thing up, and we may have one or two orange constraints. They will go away, I guarantee you, when we do some more stuff later. Okay? So don't let that worry you. But the first thing I want to do is I want to make sure that when I click here, that I'm actually grabbing that navigation bar. I mean, it looks like I am, but if I want to be sure, I'm going to come down to here and bring back up my view controller scene. Right there. Because that way, if I click on here and I click on navigation bar, now I'm sure it's the navigation bar. Does that make sense? I like doing it that way. I've been doing that more and more, especially when you start making more and more intricate apps and you're not sure if you've highlighted one thing or you've highlighted another. This will always be true. Yes?
I didn't see if you put the table view over the whole screen or just between the boxes.
No, I put it over the whole screen. All right? So now with the navigation bar highlighted there, I'm going to go and click my pin, which is the third of four down towards the bottom right-hand corner. I'm going to click right there to bring that up. All right? And once we've done that, well, what do we want to do? Well, we want to pin this to the top. We want to pin it left, and we want to pin it right. Again, what that means is whether this is portrait like this or landscape like this, it should be close to the top and pinned to the left and to the right-hand side. Now, well, I'm going to click the button in just a second, and you can if you want to, that says Add 3 Constraints. What's going to happen if you do that? What is going to happen is it's going to come back and it's going to give you an orange thing here because it's going to say, you haven't done anything yet for the bottom. We'll handle that later, so don't worry about it if you get an orange bar that comes up there. So go ahead and just click where it says Add 3 Constraints. All right? All right. Then I'm going to go over and I'm going to choose the table view over here. So again, I went back over here and I chose the table view. Now hopefully this makes sense. We're going to come back and pin, but now we want to pin all four of them. We want to pin to the top. Remember, when you say the top, it's that thing. All right? We want to pin to the side. We want to pin left side, right side, and bottom. So we want to set 4 constraints. So with the table view highlighted, I'm going to again click my pin, and I'm going to pin top, left, bottom, and right. The order in which you pin those does not matter. All right, and I'm going to click Add 4 Constraints. All right, again, if there's an orange thing, that'll all be fixed later. Don't worry, it will be. All right, that basically, believe it or not, we're done with our first one. We're done with that interface. All right, because that's all that's in it is just 2 things. The navigation bar, so we have a title, and the table view, which is going, now they should be basically be filling up the screen between those 2 things. Questions on that? All right, and this is made to be functional. It's not made to be beautiful, just so you know. So I'm going to bring up the second one. I'm going to bring up the one that says Second View Controller. And again, I'm going to highlight there and remove that. And where it says Loaded by that, I'm going to remove that. So this one is now empty. And basically what we want to do is we want to add a label. All right, and underneath that, we want to add a text field. And underneath that, we want to add a button. All right, I'm going to just throw them all 3 right in the middle. You'll see why in just a minute. All right, so I'm going to come down here, and I'm going to put in label,
And there it is. So I'm going to grab a label and I'm going to drag it right about in the middle. We're going to move it in just a second, but that's fine. So right there is fine. I'm going to double click on it and I'm going to write add a new to-do list item. All right?
And don't worry if it goes off the screen or whatever. We're going to move it in just a second. All right?
So that's the first thing we put in there. That's our label. All right? Notice it already moved over, and that's good. That's pretty close to where we're going to want it. Then next, we want to put in a text field. But you have to spell it right. All right? So I want to put in a text field. And again, I'm going to stick that, pretty much line it up almost right underneath, but I want to line it up to this. What I want to basically do is put all three of these that we're going to put in and line them up. Okay? This I'm going to drag all the way over to here,
because this is an item that we want to add our to-do list into. If we want to, I'm not going to do this, but let's say we had very complex to-do lists. So let's say that I said, pick up daughter number 1 at soccer at 3 p.m. Then pick up, etc. Let's say I was going to put a whole bunch of stuff in one list item. Then I'd want to change this so it would allow for multiple lines. But I'm not going to do that right now. I'm just going to leave it the way it is. All right?
and then finally I want to put a button. And I want to grab that button, and again, for now, I'm just going to throw it in the middle, double click on it, and I'm going to call this Add Item, because that's what I'm going to do with it, is add an item. So if you notice, when you look right here,
What I have now done is I have added a label and a text field and a button. And this label is lined up right where that plus comes in. All right? So that's lined up, and this is lined up with it, etc. If it's not perfect, it's okay. First of all, you're not turning it in. Second of all, I guess it would give you a chance, if you wanted to go back and try to fix it later, you could clear your constraints and then add them again. All right?
all right, so let's put some layout constraints in here. The first one is going to be our label. So with that label highlighted, and again, I'm going to click over to here, second scene, label, add a new to-do list item. So there it is. I'm going to come in and I'm going to again click my pin button, and I'm going to pin here both to the top and to the left. I don't want to pin to the right, and I don't want to pin to the bottom right now, but it is okay. I can use the default width and the default height.
So I've added 4 things. I click here, I click here, I click the button here that said width, and the button there that said height. This pins it to the top, this pins it to the left. This says do not change the width or the height of that element under any circumstances. So it'll look the same, all right, so it'll look the same whether I have it in portrait or landscape, and that's fine. All right? I will tell you that at least with mine, it actually looks better in landscape because of the goofy way that my simulators are set up. Everything gets thrown up way up to the top, so I have to constantly be moving it up or moving it down. You may not have to do that. I don't know. All right, so that's the first one. Then I'm going to go to the second one, the text field. All right, and with the text field highlighted, I'm going to hit pin, and I'm going to put in 3 of them. I want to pin this one to the top, so that's going to pin it as close as it can within 14 pixels of the label above it. I also want to pin it left, and I want to pin it right, because remember, this stretches the whole length. All right? And it should say add 3 constraints down here. If yours does, click the button, please, that says add 3 constraints. All right, and again, this red, it's orange, not red, so don't worry about it. We'll get it fixed. All right, and then finally, I'm going to click on Add Item right here. And again, I'm going to go over to Pin, and I'm going to do this one just like I did the first one. So top and left, don't change the width, don't change the height, and add the 4 constraints. All right. Now,
again, I've got red and some other stuff in here. And if that happens to you, maybe yours did that, maybe it didn't. Let's just say all of yours did do that. All right? Then you can click on the fourth button that's over here, right there, and say, under all views in second container, you choose update frames, and it will go away. All right? So that one went away. All right? So right now, that's what mine looks like. Not very nice, really, but for some reason this stuff got moved. I don't even care. This is just going to be a label that says add an item. All right? We can always go back and play with that stuff later. Does everybody realize, if you look up on the screen here, I can come way over here and I can click the button that's down on the bottom here. All right? Notice this says selected views and this says all views. If I click that button that says clear constraints, it removes every constraint that's on them. So I can go back and set them again. All right, if I wanted to do that. All right. I'm going to do a save right now. So I'm going to do a file save. And just so I can see what it looks like before I do much of anything here, all right, I'm going to run it. And again, you can do the same. Oh, damn it. Hopefully what you notice if you do that is you're able to bounce back and forth between the two different views by clicking the first button if you're on the second view, or the second button if you're on the first view. All right, so you're able to go back and forth. Plus, you should be able to click on hardware and choose a rotate left so you can check it out both in portrait and in landscape orientation. All right. I don't want to take the time to wait for mine. Hopefully yours came up a lot faster than mine did. All right. I will try to run my simulator during the break just to make sure that everything looks like it's going to be all right. Okay? Now, as we do this, think about it. All right? I'm asking you this question to think about. Okay, on here, I'll give you a hint. I have to create two outlets. What kind are they going to be and what are they going to be for? On right here. Yeah. There'll be an IB action and there'll be an IB outlet. Does that make sense? All right. I suggest that you follow me and you use the same names that I have because those are the ones that are on the example that I gave you. So just in case you run into any problems, if you use the same naming structure that I've used, you'll probably end up being better off. All right? And it's a lazy naming structure anyway. Okay, so with the second view controller highlighted like this, okay, my second view controller, I'm going to bring up my assistant editor, and I'll know that it's correct because if it should come up and say second view controller. And you notice that mine says second view controller, which is exactly what I'd want to have in here. All right, I'm going to close this for now. All right. So there's no code in here yet, but we're about to set up our outlets so we can start writing code. Does all that make sense? Okay. So the first thing I want to do is I want to click here on this on my text field, hold down on Control, hold down on the touch screen, and drag. You know how to do this. All right, so this one is again this one will end up being our IB outlet. All right. And we're going to use this to put in items into our to-do list. Notice, add a new to-do list item. So I just called it item. Everything else can be left the same way. And when you get done and you click connect, if yours looks like this, if yours says at IB outlet week var item colon UI text field exclamation point, it's correct. All right. Well, notice what our button says. If you look at the button, the name of the button says it's called add item, correct? So I'm going to again hold down on my control, go over here and drag, and right underneath the variable I just put in, make sure instead of an outlet you choose an action. Here's a surprise. I'm going to call this add item. Whoops. Okay. Make sure again that yours looks like this. It's an action and not an outlet. Its name is add item, and click connect. All right. So now it's put into the space where I can go. That's the code I'm going to have to put in. We're not going to put it in yet, but that's the code that I have to put in order to make sure that when I click add item, it adds it to my table that's on the other. All right. That's over on the other screen. Does all that make sense? Now there's other stuff that we're going to have to do in here. If we want to try to make our life a little bit easier, why don't we do a few other things right now, such as, let's come up to the top here where it says class second view controller, UI view controller. Let's click right after that. Let's add to that UI text field delegate. All right, so I just added this right here. I put a comma in, and I added that right there. And hopefully by now everybody's aware of this. If I screw up when I type, it's not going to turn blue like it did. All right, so hopefully you've noticed that when you put something in and you actually put it in correct, that it's going to go, and at least on mine it's blue. Yours might be a different color. That doesn't matter. All right, but you can tell that it's an acceptable, understood word. All right, couple more things that we want to do in here. The next thing that we want to do is in the viewDidLoad function, where it says do any additional setup. I'm going to remove that comment, hit enter once, and we're going to add a single line, which for lack of better words is going to register the delegate for us. We say self.item.delegate equal self. All right? And somebody a lot smarter than me could explain that to you, but again, for lack of better words, we're registering that. What we're saying is this view controller is going to be responsible for everything that we want to do on this particular screen. Now, you may or may not remember this, but there's two other things that we want to add in here. We want to set this up, and what I'm going to ask is after we do this, okay, after we do this, I'm going to ask you to run your program and bring up the text field and try to type something in it. But what we're going to do is we're going to add the code so that if you either click the return button or if you click off of it, the keyboard goes away. Maybe you remember how to do that, maybe you don't. There's two things that we want to do in here. All right, I'm going to put them right under my add item. So the first one I'm going to put right here. And I'm going to put override func. And remember, it's called touches began. And if you notice, the system already knows what I'm trying to type in. So if I want to, I can keep tabbing to accept all that stuff. You might find that easier to do, you might not. But I'm going to just tab my way through there. I've still got to make some changes. All right, I'm going to make some changes to it right now. All right, I'm going to leave all this stuff that you see that's in here, I'm going to leave it in there. All right, but where it says code, of course, that's wrong. I don't want the word code to be in there. So what I want to put in there is self.view.end editing true. All right, and essentially what that means is if I go and touch anywhere off of, all right, anywhere off of where I am, I'm done editing. So make this thing go away. But in order to make it go away, there's one other routine that we have to add here, which again is very, very short. All right, so we say, and I'll put it right here, func text field should return. All right, and again, I don't want the code that's right there, so I've got to remove the code. What I want to say is the name of my text field, item dot resign first responder, and then return true. Okay? Make sure after you've done that, save it, take a good look at your screen, make sure you've got nothing on the screen that's in red, like where you've got an error message where you get the little red dot off to the side. If you've got something like that, that probably means you made some kind of a typing mistake. All right? But if you're cool with it, save it, run it, go to the second screen, type something in there, all right? And after you've typed something in there, it's still not going to go into the table view, but you know, you can click the button or whatever, but try to click the return key and try to click off and make sure that stuff is working. All right. The only thing that we have to add yet in here is our add item routine. Other than that, we're totally done with this. But it's not going to make sense to add the add item stuff yet because we have to create some stuff on the other screen in our first view controller.swift file. So there's only literally 3 lines that we're going to have to add to this particular file. Yes?
Where did the autocorrect come in at? You know by any chance?
The autocorrect is always on.
Is it?
Yes.
Oh, okay, cool. I thought there was maybe something
No.
put in there. Okay.
You can turn it off. You can go up into your user settings and turn it off, but by default, it's always
Oh,
on.
that's awesome.
All right? This is a good time to break right here. And during the break, I'm going to try to run this, and I'm going to try to bring it up in the simulator to make sure mine works the way that it should work. All right? Now, if you're a little bit behind, just bear with me for a second because I want to save this so I can try to produce it so I can get it out on YouTube before we leave today. Okay? So even if the screen goes away, it'll go away for a minute or two, and then it'll be back. All right?
Jeff,
Yes.
how much these Macs cost?
How much do the Macs cost?
Yeah, they're right.
About was it 1,100?
Closer to 1,000, I think.
Okay. It depends on
Oh,
you know,
each
it,
one I get.
yeah,